dumbbell and
Absolutely.
show us how you do it? So notice George grabs a 30-pound dumbbell, which seems kind of heavy, but it's actually not that bad because he's using his legs. Remember, George is very strong, so you might not be at a 30 yet. You might start with a 5-pound weight, a 10-pound weight, even just your body weight. Now, if you notice as George is doing this, he takes a little pause at the top, right? And as he lowers down, his core is activated the whole entire time, and he maintains alignment here. He's not collapsing. If you notice, one of the key things here is where you look. So if I stay looking straight ahead, as I lower down and I swing up, my spine stays neutral. If I happen to try to follow the weight, I might overextend at the back and hurt my spine here, and I might injure myself if I try following it down. So don't really look at the weight with this one. Just stay looking straight ahead. Nice natural stance. And if you find that, there again, you feel the weight's getting out of control, you feel you might hurt your shoulder, you just don't feel comfortable going all the way up, you can always play with the range of motion with this, meaning I can dip a little bit more shallow and I can swing not as high. So a substitution for this will be, as I'm here, just barely moving. And then as I feel more comfortable, I can start working my height up, driving my legs down more, to eventually getting into a full swing.
The power comes from his legs.
Yes.
Not from the shoulder. Don't try to lift the weight with your shoulder. It's all the glute, the core, and the legs.
And a key detail to that, if you just want to get that leg drive, is when you go down, try not to push off the balls of your feet. Try to push your heels down into the ground. That activates all of these muscles, and it gives you much more power. And that's where the power comes from the hamstrings, from the glutes, from the back. And that covers the basics of the dumbbell swing. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the dumbbell get up. We don't have to use a dumbbell, but it's probably the best variation, especially if you're using this at home. Some people, old strong, used to use barbells, used to use all kinds of big, heavy objects. Even, you could probably even use a human body. Now, the thing about the get up, let's go ahead and show it a few times, George. Its entirety. If you notice throughout, George is keeping his eyes on the weight the whole time. That's very important. Don't discount that and just think he's just doing it for whatever reason. This is one of the most important details you can learn about this whole entire movement. Do not, at any time, take your eyes off this weight. Don't look at the screen. Don't watch us doing it. When you start doing your get-ups, the only thing is you and your weight. Because if you take your eyes off that weight, it's very likely, it could definitely happen, that this weight could come down and hit you. And you don't want to get hit in the head by a dumbbell, especially if you're using 15, 20, 30 pounds or more. It can cause some damage.
Absolutely.
Now, what would you say is the main functional value for you using that movement, George?
I would say when I fight, I use a technique called the hip eyes to stand back up from when I'm under one of my opponents.
So that's pretty much working the same muscles throughout.
Absolutely. It's pretty much the same pattern. The eyes, remember to keep the eyes on the dumbbell. The eyes that directed your movement. So when we're going up, keep looking up. Don't look down. And very important, don't look at us on the TV. You might hurt yourself.
Now let's go and try to break down what's happening with the get-up. We're using no weight here because we're going to have George go very slow. And this is actually a great way to start learning how to use this. No weight in your hand and just looking at the hand that's up. Now let's break down what's happening here throughout, okay? So George his shoulders are working, everything's working, and now his abdominals are working, his obliques are working, the shoulder over here is working as he comes up. Now this is very important. Let's go ahead and stop here now, George. As George comes up, notice how he goes in the opposite direction of the arm that's extended. He comes up and his left arm, so if he's holding the weight with his right hand, or if he's looking at his right hand, his left arm is the base support here as he comes up. So this takes some of the stress off the body and it gives it throughout the structure. Let's stay here for a second, George. Let's come back down. I want to stress leg position. So you notice how when George came up here, the arm that's the post arm, being his left arm, is the same leg that's bent. This is the same position. We do this on purpose when we do our training because this is what we call the staggered butterfly guard or staggered hooks guard. He's doing this as a very functional transfer into the body. Now, at this point, George has to notice how this knee's up in the air, okay? His foot's down. When he decides to make his move and come up in the stand, he's going to hip heist up, meaning he's going to turn his hips up, and he gets his knee on the ground. And now as he comes up in the stand, he just drives upward. As he lowers back down, he sets his knee onto the ground, and he reverses the whole motion. Notice how as he steps, let's come back here real quick, George. Let's come up. Notice how when he comes down, he lets his foot flip around, and his left arm post onto the ground. Then he lowers down elbow onto the elbow, then he goes down to the shoulder, then he lets his leg straighten all the way back out. So as you can see, there's a lot of movement going on, and you can't discredit any one move. You have to make sure that each one's done correctly. So it's very important. This is the most difficult part for people, is this, as I'm here, is getting this knee back, and as a base of support, I want to get it underneath my hip. It's very important as I'm doing this that I don't keep my knee too narrow, because then I'll collapse as I try to come up. So if you find that you can just get